Alright, this one's really important to me personally, so we'll just go straight into it. Children with disabilities suffer severe neglect and abuse in Australian schools. A third of all children with disability have been restrained or secluded at school, while half have been bullied in the past year. According to a government-funded report that reveals severe neglect and abuse of young people and calls for special schools to be phased out. The report, released by Children and Young People with Disabilities (CYDA) on Monday, collated the experience of more than 500 students and their families from a national survey. Families reported cases including an 11-year-old child with a disability being suicidal, another under 12 hiding from school bullies in a rubbish bin, a child between 7 and 9 years old who was left briefly in a hot taxi and felt scared that he couldn't get out. Mary Sayers, the CYDA chief executive, said the report uncovered children with disabilities were regularly bullied by other students and at times by school staff, as well as the common use of restrictive practices. The overarching message we have from the survey is that there is severe abuse and neglect of students with disabilities in schools, she told The Guardian. Nearly half, 48.2% of students with disabilities experienced bullying in school in the past year, including 9.1% who said school staff have been the bullies. The use of restraints and seclusion was reported by nearly a third of respondents, 30%. Most commonly, students were physically restrained, but a small number of families reported use of chemical restraints. About 1 in 5 children with disabilities have been placed in seclusion, such as solitary confinement with and without supervision in a room, classroom, or staff office. Often schools, we hear, are using this as a behavioural management technique rather than actually looking at, well, what would it take to have this child included in the classroom, so I was told Guardian Australia. What it points to is that schools need to really be committed to inclusive education. In 2015, news that schools in Canberra were using metal cages to detain students with autism provoked national outrage. The report found 40% of students with disabilities have been excluded from events or activities, while 15.5% of students who attended mainstream schools said they were separated from peers in a special unit, either permanently or at times. In addition, about 15% of students with disabilities have been suspended from school, and 12.5% of parents said their children been refused enrolment, the survey found. One family of a child in rural Western Australia told the survey that I applied to 36 schools in WA, have attended 4, which 2 have removed me, and 3 would not meet his needs and assaulted him. Another said their child had been suspended 60 out of 150 days in the first 3 terms last year. So it called the government to adopt a national inclusion education plan that would phase out special schools and separated classrooms/units within mainstream schools. Under the plan, teaching students would also take mandatory semester subjects at university to train them to better work with students with disabilities. It comes as the Royal Commission into Violence, Abuse, Neglect and Exploitation of People with Disabilities prepares to hold its first public hearing in early November. The Commission is expected to examine issues raised in the report. Alright, I'll kind of be reading from a post I put up with this article, so help me keep it together a bit. I quoted a piece of the article: severe neglect and abuse of young people, and calls for special schools to be phased out. That makes no sense. If special schools are the problem, then what is the solution then? Putting everyone in mainstream schools, that would make more problems. My belief comes from my personal history, my childhood. My brother has autism, and he stopped speaking when he was 2. And he went to special schools the whole time, and I went to your run-of-the-mill public mainstream school. And my school had a special needs class in it, and they had a fenced off bit and extra staff in there and smaller class numbers, and I remember yelling at people in my class that would make fun of those students. And that's what made me grateful that my brother was in a special school where it had specialty facilities, expert staff, it was well staffed for staff to student ratio, and he couldn't get out because, you see, my brother has a thing for chasing the white line down the middle of the road. So either you need to constantly have an eye on him and be fast, or have a secure area where you at least need a certain key or lock to get all the way to the front entrance. You can't have that in mainstream schools. That's what I meant in my post when I kept saying my school didn't have the capacity to keep my brothers safe. And like I even said in the last video I made, teachers don't get paid enough as it is. And you want to make them have to deal with people that need extra attention themselves and then a probably already crowded classroom. I remember my classes getting bigger and bigger as I went through school, and you got less and less time to go through your work with the person who's meant to be teaching you, and you just end up doing photocopies and photocopies. Somebody like my brother who doesn't speak is isn't going to cope in a traditional classroom setting. So the way school is structured, it just won't work. The way schools are structured, it just won't work. And the bullying thing, a lot of the examples given seem to be examples that would be in mainstream schools. It didn't outline what cases the staff were, because I feel like I definitely need to go into bat for all the staff that worked at all the schools my brother went to, because they were outstanding people. It's the sort of job that you get into because you're doing it because you care. And it's just so nice talking to these people that were like the first time someone's talking to me about my brother, like talking about him like he is what he is, another person, where so many other people would be like, at best ignore him, at worst be afraid of him, or disgustingly judgmental. And yeah, the solution to the problem here laid out in this article has really blown my mind, because you can't phase them out. Because if a child has a certain severity of a certain disability and they can cope in a mainstream school and have teachers and staff that can adapt the classroom life to work for everybody there, fantastic, great, that's brilliant. But what are you going to do with people that are non-verbal, people that are very prone to seizures? You can't phase them out. And so many of them that I've seen that are fairly brand new with like state-of-the-art equipment in there, you can't set up the NDIS and then go, yep, we'll get rid of the schools. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Special schools didn't just help my brother, help my whole family, and the staff that I personally met at the few in South Australia that I've been to, magnificent people. And like, you gotta understand, when somebody can't speak and you're sending them off to these people for a huge chunk of the day, for a huge chunk of the week, the trust that you need to be okay with this all, because he can't come back and tell you if anything's happened. That it's such an incredible thing that it's very hard to explain. But yeah, teachers don't get paid enough, classrooms are already too big, there's just different severities of different disabilities that this makes less than sense. And yeah, thanks for watching, like, subscribe, have a good one. Oh yeah, and how good are these drawings? These are by my brother. If it weren't for special schools, I wouldn't have these drawings to have on my wall. Peace.